Are you concerned at all, sir, though, that this could be in the back of voters' minds? Your age, the fact that you've had a heart attack now, that this may weigh into their decision as to whether or not they should vote for you?
You know, everything that happens every day weighs on how people feel about you. And my own view is that, and I think it's the voters' view, you look at the totality of who a candidate is.
The top 12 Democratic presidential candidates return to the debate stage Tuesday, including Senator Bernie Sanders, who has been off the campaign trail since having a heart attack last week. At 78 years old, Sanders is the oldest candidate in the field and one of 3 in their 70s. So will age be a major factor in determining the Democratic nominee? We asked 538's Nate Silver, do you buy that?
So age is a sensitive topic, so let's start with something really easy to prove. The leading Democrats are really old by presidential standards. If elected, Elizabeth Warren would be 71 on Inauguration Day, Joe Biden would be 78, and Bernie Sanders would be 79. Historically, 55 is the median age for presidents at inauguration. Of course, age doesn't appear to be that big of a concern, with the 3 oldest candidates currently 1, 2, and 3 in Democratic polls. Biden has stayed at the top of the polls in the 30% range all year. Warren's numbers have only gone up in recent months, and Sanders continues to rake in cash from his diehard supporters, many of whom actually are quite young. But there's a difference between Warren on the one hand and Biden and Sanders on the other hand. President Reagan was 77 when he finished his second term. Both Biden and Bernie would be older than that on their first day in office. Do voters see a difference between the early 70s and the late 70s? Actually, they might. One poll earlier this year found 62% of voters had reservations about voting for someone older than 75. That compares to only 48% of voters in another poll who said they'd be less likely to vote for someone over the age of 70. Now, how age plays out in practice is harder to say. If a candidate makes a gaffe or has a bad debate or even has a medical problem, voters may or may not attribute that to age. In polling by YouGov this week, perceptions about whether Sanders could beat Trump declined after his heart attack, but his overall standing in the polls has been roughly unchanged. And just one more thing, it may be obvious, but it's important to remember that the current president is pretty old too. Any Democratic nominee will likely be facing President Trump, who at 74 would be the oldest president ever elected to a second term. So my bottom line is this: age won't necessarily cause Biden and Bernie's current supporters to abandon them, but it may make it hard for them to expand their coalitions later on.
Our thanks to Nate. Yesterday I traveled to Vermont and talked to Senator Sanders at his home in Burlington. So how are you feeling? Are you ready for the debate? You ready to get back out there?
I am. I'm feeling very well. Look forward to the debate and look forward to getting back to a very vigorous campaign.
Are your doctors okay with that?
Well, let me be very clear and backtrack and tell you that probably there's nobody who has run a more vigorous campaign than I did. And we're talking about 3 or 4 rallies a day and town meetings and so forth and so on. But I think after a short period of time, we'll probably be able to return to that. Not the first day back.
And your doctors are okay with that?
Yeah.
So are you going to release all your medical records to put to rest?
Absolutely, yes.
When do you plan to do that?
As soon as we can. And we intended to do that before the heart attack, and we'll certainly do it with all of the information that's available.
What do you think the standard should be for medical records? I mean, should Joe Biden release all his medical records?
Yeah, I think when you're running for president of the United States, the American people have a right to know the condition of your health. And I think that is a standard that should be applicable to all candidates.
Now, you said that you didn't think for a minute about dropping out when you had the heart attack. Is that true? Not even for a second?
Well, as soon as I learned what the situation was, I was able to talk to the doctors. Yes, that's correct.
How?
Well, look, here's the story. You know, heart attack is a scary word. What I had is a 45, 50-minute procedure. 2 stents were placed in my heart because I had a blocked artery. This is a procedure, as I understand it, done many, many hundreds of thousands of times a year. It's a fairly common procedure. And people are back on their feet pretty soon, as is the case with me. I think you got to watch yourself. You got to watch your diet. You got to be better at exercising. You got to be more aware. If there's a lesson I've learned here, let me tell you, Jonathan, is there were symptoms that I should have picked up on. I was more fatigued despite a heavy schedule than I should have been. I wasn't sleeping as well as I should have been. Occasionally I was a little bit wobbly, and I should have put 2 and 2 together. And I didn't, and I'm sorry about that. And I hope anybody watching it does that. Go to the doctor if you think you have symptoms and take care of the situation.
Now, you may come back now stronger than you were before. I mean,
I got an artery that's
Yes.
not blocked. That's a good thing. Yes.
That's a good thing. But if you had significant, serious concerns going forward, would you drop out of the race? I mean,
Well,
would
look,
you?
I don't want to speculate about what might have been. I am where I am. But I'll tell you this. Let me be very clear about this. You asked me what I thought about, and what I thought about is I was aware that when I was in pain and we went to the hospital, I had a good Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance program. I had Medicare on top of that. And what I did think, and I thought about a lot, is what happens to the many millions of people who don't have good health insurance, who get sick, and who don't go to the doctor when they should, or in fact leave the hospital with tens and tens of thousands of dollars in debt. So maybe one of the lessons that I have to tell you I learned is that I'm going to fight even harder than I have for Medicare for all. I am more committed to that struggle than I was a few weeks ago.
So let me ask you, you and Elizabeth Warren have pretty close to identical positions on the big issues. What do you say to those who say that they would pick her because she's 8 years younger than you, she didn't just come through this, didn't just have a heart attack, and look, in the positions, you're pretty much the same?
Well, look, every American is going to make his or her own choice about the candidate that they want. And Elizabeth Warren has been a friend of mine for some 25 years. And I think she is a very, very good senator. But there are differences between Elizabeth and myself. Elizabeth, I think, as you know, has said that she is a capitalist through her bones. I'm not. I think the situation today that we face in this country of the greed and the corruption that is existing in Washington, that is existing at the corporate elite level, where you have massive amounts of price fixing going on in the drug companies, where we're the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people, where we have right now, as we speak, in the fossil fuel industry, you got companies making billions of dollars a year in profit, doing what? Oh, by the way, they're destroying the planet, all right? And I think business as usual and doing it the old-fashioned way is not good enough. It's not regulation. Now, what we need is, in fact, I don't want to get people too nervous, we need a political revolution. I am, I believe, the only candidate who's going to say to the ruling class of this country, the corporate elite, enough with your greed and with your corruption. We need real change in this country.
So you don't think that's what Elizabeth Warren is saying?
Well, look, Elizabeth is a friend of mine. She will speak for herself. I've just told you what I do.
But you have said there are differences, and you just mentioned a label.
Well, it's not a label. I mean, Elizabeth considers herself, if I got the quote correctly, to be a capitalist to her bones. I don't. And the reason I am not is because I will not tolerate for 1 second the kind of greed and corruption and income and wealth inequality and so much suffering that is going on in this country today, which is unnecessary.
She's built her campaign about having a plan for everything, but she hasn't put out a health care plan yet.
Again, Elizabeth is a friend of mine. Talk to her. I have put out a health care plan. It's called Medicare for All. We're going to tell the insurance companies and the drug companies that we will not continue this current dysfunctional and cruel system.
Okay, I want to turn to this week's news, the president's sudden decision to withdraw U.S. troops from Syria. You were very critical of this.
It's an outrage. The Kurds have lost, as I recall, about 11,000 soldiers in the fight against ISIS. Some 20,000 have been wounded. Mm-hmm. Now, what does it say to the entire world that you have a president who gets off the phone with Erdogan of Turkey and then sends out a tweet that says, oh, by the way, we're deserting these people who have put their lives on the line to work with us in fighting against some of the worst terrorists in the world. Sends a message to the entire world. You cannot trust the United States of America anymore in foreign affairs. Doesn't matter what the president says, because tomorrow he may reverse himself. It is outrageous. Now, how you deal with Turkey, how you deal with that whole region is a whole other issue. It's no great secret. I am a strong opponent of endless wars. You're looking at a candidate who opposed vigorously the war in Iraq, because I knew exactly the kind of destabilization.
I mean, he sounded a little bit like Bernie Sanders when he was talking about.
Except he lies. The difference between wars. Yeah, I know, but the difference between Trump and me is he lies. I don't. And again, you don't turn your back on an ally that lost 11,000 troops fighting against terrorism through a tweet and a discussion with Erdogan.
So I want to ask you about the impeachment inquiry. What do you think about Nancy Pelosi's decision not to hold a vote to move forward with the impeachment inquiry?
I don't think that's the major issue. I'm glad that I have called for an impeachment inquiry, I think, since May. And I think it's proper that it's going forward. I want it to go forward as expeditiously as it possibly can. I think at the end of the day, the evidence is there to impeach Trump. Now, here is the real issue that we should be talking about, and that is what happens if, and as I expect will be the case, Trump is impeached in the House. The Constitution tells us the trial comes to the Senate.
Right.
Will Mitch McConnell do the right thing? Will he have a full trial where the American people, as senators, I'll be one of them, can hear the evidence regarding what Trump did? I am nervous that McConnell will put party in front of country and not do that. But I think no matter what your view is, you think Trump is innocent, fine. He will have strong defense there. You think he's guilty, there will be strong prosecutorial efforts there. And the Senate will make up its decision. It will make its decision, as will the American people. That has to take place.
Our thanks to Senator Sanders.